Are you buying real estate in 2021? That's what we're talking about on this Queer Money follow-up, episode number 12, following up on Queer Money podcast, episode number 12, in which we talked again with William S. Matthews. This time we talked about 7 home buying tips that all first-time home buyers should know, maybe even all home buyers should know. And it was very informative, and we're going to cover 2 of those topics today. Mostly we're going to focus on 1, but if you want to get all 7 topics, go ahead and click that link there and or that link down there and subscribe to the Queer Money podcast so you can hear all 7 tips. But the reason what we're going to focus on this Queer Money follow-up is actually something that David and I experienced personally firsthand. William made the comment, first-time home buyers should use buying their first home as a strategy and not a goal. And this actually proved very beneficial in our life, even though we bought our first home before we talked with William.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things he said during the interview, and we have seen this kind of data over and over and over again, is this whole idea of that most people stay in a home for a relatively short period of time. And he mentioned that most folks stay in their first home anywhere from about 3 to 5 years. And so the reason why he suggested this, and we realized that we had already gotten on this path when we had purchased our home. We had been, I think when we recorded this, we had been in our condo for
7 or 8 years.
Yeah, at least 7. I think it was almost 9 years at that point. But one of the things that he suggested was that the vast majority of people, when they purchase their first home, it is not their forever home. And for that reason, you don't necessarily need to be looking at that home that as the long-term purchase that you're going to be there for 10, 20, 30 years, that this is the home that if you plan to raise children, that you're going to raise children in. It's not the home that has to kind of fit your forever ideal of what a home should be.
Right. It doesn't have to have the perfect bathrooms and the perfect kitchen and the perfect living room, the perfect number of bathrooms, the perfect square footage, the perfect yard. I mean, we get hung up on, we see these shows on HGTV, right? We're like, we have to have that perfect home as our first home.
Right.
But you're likely not going to stay in it.
Right. Exactly. And I think one of the things that I find so interesting about what has happened over maybe the last 15 years is this whole idea of investors going into neighborhoods where they can purchase homes at a low cost, flip those homes, and then turn around and sell them to new home buyers who are looking for a home to be more in the shape of their forever home, or they want it to have, that brand new kitchen, the brand new bathrooms, the brand new hardwood floors, everything is fixed up. Well, what happens when they fix all that stuff up? They need to and want to, they're investors, they want to make a profit off of that. Right. So basically, when we're out there looking for this forever home, or we're looking for this home to be in this perfect state, we are, in a sense, giving up. If we're purchasing an existing home, we're giving up the opportunity to get some of that price appreciation by doing those kinds of things ourselves, getting the home to look like what we want. I mean, I remember when we went shopping for homes, one of the things that we would always do is we would always go in and look at these we were in the market for a condo. We weren't really looking for a single family home. But every time we went in, we would always look at it and say, well, I would do this with it and I would do that with this.
It was part of the fun.
Right. It was kind of
for us.
Right. It was that kind of whole idea of making the home your own. And when you do that, you're going to spend a bunch of money, right?
Yeah. Well, so the critical takeaway from the concept of don't have your first home be a goal, but a strategy. In our experience, we were shopping for our condo, and we were both in financial services, making decent money. We had a decent household income, and we were working with a real estate /agent /friend, and we looked at, I don't know, maybe 12 to 25 different places of all shapes, sizes, and conditions. But what was interesting was our agent was encouraging us to buy, especially at that time, it was 2007.
Well, we started originally shopping in 2006 as we got to that point where we saw the light at the end of the tunnel with our debt.
Yeah.
And we started looking for, because we desperately wanted to get out of that basement apartment.
But we were looking, 2006, 2007, and at that time, like, real estate agents were putting people in homes that were 10 times their household income. The whole idea at that time was to get a zero interest ARM, right? That's what they were.
A zero interest loan where you were just paying the interest, and then
for the
eventually
first 3 to 5, 7 years,
right?
And then the interest rate would kick in. Well, obviously we know what happened with that, with the crash of the 2008 housing market, and so obviously that strategy didn't work out. So, luckily and fortunately, with our experience in financial services, we were averse to the concept of buying something 5 and 7 times our household income, despite what our real estate agent was saying. And we had a couple thoughts. One was, not only were we both in financial services, but at that time we were both working for the same financial services firm, Charles Schwab. And we've been through ups and downs in the market.
We don't like Charles Schwab now. Well, we haven't for a long time, but anyway.
We've been through ups and downs in the market, and we knew, like, there's always the possibility that one or both of us could be laid off. And our fear, having just almost completely paid off our credit card debt, was, well, what do we do if the any part of the economy goes down, and there's a risk that, or the reality is that one of us gets laid off.
Right.
What would we do? We don't want to have a home that's 3 to 5 to 7 times our household income. And David made the prescient suggestion, let's try to cap ourselves out at 1.5 times our household income.
Yeah. And that was one of the smartest moves we ever made. One, because it kind of put us in a price range where we really were shopping for places that hadn't been fixed up, that need a little TLC. Now, obviously, we're not like we're not the HGTV people who are going to go through and completely remodel everything.
Who's that hot gay guy with the abs? We're not him. We're not him.
He's not so hot anymore. But anyway.
Yes, he's beautiful.
But
everyone's beautiful.
We knew that we could do a little bit of stuff, but we knew that we would be buying a place that needed some TLC, but we weren't going to completely remodel it. So we were looking for something that was somewhat move-in ready, somewhat needed some TLC, but wasn't a complete remodel. And that gave us an idea, really, of what we could be looking for.
Yeah, that really narrowed down the scope of what the homes would be that we would look at.
Right. And it also allowed us to be looking at places that we knew would get some price appreciation if we put some money into it. Get some price appreciation if the neighborhood picked up. Because we were actually looking at a neighborhood that was getting ready to go through some major gentrification. And that really kind of helped us think about it as a strategy and not a goal, that we wanted our place to have this appreciation, not just be already at the appreciated point.
Right. And our strategy at the time when we were buying that particular condo was, we'll buy this low price condo that was decent and good enough for us to live in for 5 to 7 years. We ended up living there for 10 years. We would do what we needed to do to fix it up over the course of the time that we lived in there. And then at that point, our goal was to maybe rent that place out when we moved out and bought another home. Turns out that couldn't happen for a number of reasons. But that was our strategy, was that we would rent it out and then we would start acquiring rental income. So we'd have multiple streams of income on top of our multiple streams of income, which is something that we recommend that folks do as much as they can, because being reliant on one source of income, as many people are learning through the pandemic, it can be a very risky strategy. So we wanted to generate some real estate income, and that was basically our long-term strategy with the first home that we ever bought.
Yeah. One of the other things I think is really great was the quote from William when we were talking about this whole idea of making that first purchase, because we do get I think we get lulled into wanting this fantasy home, right? We scroll through Instagram, we see these beautiful pictures of people and people's homes. We don't know what it took for them to get there, right? But we just want that. We go on TV and we watch HGTV and we see these beautiful homes. We see these beautiful homes in TV shows and movies and all that. And we all want the beautiful home, right? But what happens when we purchase the beautiful home when we really can't afford it? And he said, don't shackle yourself with golden handcuffs. And I think this is so interesting. John and I, that was one of the things we said to ourselves right then and there, was that when we were making this purchase, we didn't want to be house poor. And that really what it is he was basically kind of alluding to this idea that you are only availing yourself to one investment. When you purchase a home that you cannot afford then to put money into your 401k, you can't afford to set money aside for investing or maybe building your own business, that all of your money, more than 30, 40, 50% of your money is going into your mortgage and maintaining your home, you are basically binding yourself to not having the opportunity to take advantage of other investing opportunities or other opportunities to really enjoy life. And that kind of golden handcuff really then limits you if the market turns on housing, right? So like we saw in 2008, if the market turns on housing and you only have housing as your one investment, you're really going to suffer a lot, because
as a lot of people did.
Right. Your only investment is going to tank, and you may be caught in a situation where you can no longer afford to have that home, whether it's losing a job or a furlough or your hours are cut back or your spouse loses their job, whatever the case may be. You may end up then having to sell that one investment at a loss or at a low point, when the rest of the market, when everybody else is selling and you're going to have to sell as well, or there's no desire to buy, then you're going to sell your investment against the golden rule of investing, and that is buy low, sell high, right? So that's why he was suggesting don't shackle yourself with these golden handcuffs.
Well, I think what makes this, I think, interesting for LGBT people is that, the traditional path for straight couples is that they meet, they get married, they have kids, they buy a house, and then their primary focus at that point is raising their kids. And maybe for straight couples, it does kind of make sense to think about their first home being maybe not so much a forever home, but a longer term prospect, then especially for LGBT people who, as we know from the Williams Institute studies year over year, only about 20% of LGBT people have children. So there's 80% of us who don't. And we're kind of conditioned with this sort of straight real estate concept where that first home has to be the most perfect home ever, on top of the fact that, we need to have something that we can show off to our friends and family and prove how valuable and worthwhile that we are. But we're LGBT people, we don't have to worry about having that yard. We don't have to worry about having that long-term stability for these offspring that we're raising for the next 25 years. We have a little bit more flexibility. So, and then on top of that, we don't necessarily, the less money that we have in a real estate investment, the more money, the more disposable income, or a more discretionary income that we can put towards other aspects of our lives to improve the quality of our life in other areas, such as what we like to do and a lot of gay men like to do is travel. But if there's other areas of your life that you want to sort of 10 times, it's harder to do that if you put all your eggs in one basket, such as real estate property. But our entire society is sort of designed and created around what straight couples want.
Right.
And I think sometimes unconsciously LGBT people sort of latch onto that a little bit.
Well, it's a model, right? Like it's just like when you go in to talk to a financial advisor is going to sit you down and treat you just like you were a straight couple, right? And they're going to look at your future and your investments as if you were a straight couple. Well, that's not always it's not always going to be the same. We're less likely as LGBT folks to retire in the same manner that straight couples are doing it. We have less options when it comes to LGBT-focused retirement facilities. We're more likely to gravitate towards certain cities to retire in than maybe retiring in lower cost areas than our straight counterparts. And a lot of that is they're just not planning or thinking ahead for that. That's why it's really important to work with a financial advisor that is 100% okay with you saying, hey, we're a gay couple. we're a lesbian couple, we're trans, whatever the case may be. These are our goals. Be very upfront with them, because you need to explain to them, you may have to explain to them, these are the things that I need that you are typically not planning for when you're building out that model. Well, I think the same thing might be happening with the real estate industry, is that they're kind of, you look at the vast majority of families or people, and they seem to be gravitating towards the suburbs and the exurbs and the smaller towns, whereas queer folks really end up spending most of their time living in the urban core, because they feel more comfortable being in those areas, because they're more likely to be around other queer folks. And so the models that are built or talked about for the straight community may not necessarily apply to us, right?
So it's like when you're at work and you have a manager, you kind of you should be, a good employee knows how to manage up. I think that what you're saying then is that LGBT people, we sort of need to manage our advisors. And even if they're LGBT friendly, they might not know all the nuances that are unique to our particular situation. And I think what's beneficial for folks is that I think very often, like I said earlier, that LGBT folks don't know exactly what those nuances are for them, or how those nuances affect their finances. And that kind of takes us back to the hopes and dreams exercise that we have a lot of people do. The people that we coach, the people who are in our courses, one of the very first exercises we have them do is to figure out what are your truest, deepest hopes and dreams, not what society wants or expects of you, not what mom and dad want of you,
Instagram,
not what Instagram is telling you have to have, and most importantly, not what you think the gay community thinks you should have, because very often we'll latch onto that because we have to compete to be the best gay. We need to figure out what's most important to us, and then you design or you architect your lifestyle around that. And so if not having children as a gay couple or lesbian couple or trans couple is not a goal of yours, and you don't necessarily see owning a home as, that's not a top goal of yours either, then you need to customize your lifestyle, your spending, and investments around what's most important to you.
Right. So that whole idea of having your first home be a strategy is really important, a strategy rather than a goal. If your first home can be the strategy that helps get you to or on the path to your ultimate goal, right? Maybe your first home is the purchase that you make that's going to be the investment that you will end up selling, that will allow you then to move into
Upgrade,
the neighborhood,
baby.
right? So have that as a strategy. But when we were talking about this with William, we ended up talking about a total of 7 different home buying tips. And as John mentioned at the outset, we're only going to cover really 2 today. But that first idea of a strategy,
Click this link to get the
wherever,
other 7,
wherever that is, right? But the thing that we want to be thinking about if we're having our first home buying purchase as a strategy is what things should we be looking at that help us with that strategy. And we want to talk about one of those today, and that is, are other homes being fixed up
in that particular neighborhood?
Right. So when you're out there shopping, if you're out there shopping for
this first time home,
right? You're out there shopping.
Especially.
Go ahead. Take over.
Just call me your editor, right? Real-time editor.
If you're out there shopping for that first time home and you want to purchase one in an area where you think you're going to get that appreciation, you're going to find that growth, you're going to want to make sure that you're looking for one that's in, and I think Mindy Jensen said this on one of the episodes, right, of Bigger Pockets. We had her on our podcast, talked about this whole idea of buying in the path of progress. And one of the ways that you can buy in the path of progress is look around. Are other homes being fixed up? Right? So think back to the Castro, Hell's Kitchen, Halstead, all these places today that are the happening neighborhoods in many of the big gay cities. 20, 30, 40 years ago, people were moving into those neighborhoods, and they were not the nicest neighborhoods, but they started to gentrify them, right? They started to take care of their homes. They started to take care of the yards. They started doing work on the houses. You can start to see that happening in a neighborhood. Look for those big dumpsters that have trash, right? The construction dumpsters. If you're moving into a condo building, ask the board, the HOA board, or ask the manager of the building, are there other units in this building being fixed up? It's a good indication that you're then making an investment for that strategy in the right area.
Yeah, you can also very often in many cities, zoning requirements require that these records be housed in a public office. So you can also do some research in your your zoning office in your city. I don't know where that is, but go there. So these are just two of the strategies that we covered on this particular Queer Money episode. I'll tell you, because we only bought a home that was 1.5 times our household income at that time in 2007, we were able to not only get ourselves out of that $51,000 in credit card debt, which was almost paid off by then, but we still had a little bit to pay off. But it allowed us to completely change our financial lives around. We were able to save a significant amount of money in our 401ks and other investments, which have set us on the path to financial security today and have virtually guaranteed us financial security by the time we hit retirement. And on top of that, we've been able to travel all over the world, mostly on cash. And when we did use credit cards, we were able to pay those off quickly so that we were able to acquire points to travel even more. And all of that was conditioned on the fact that we decided, you know what, a home isn't our most important thing. We don't want to be stuck in our home. In fact, our home was barely over 1,000 square feet, which shocks a lot of people. That you can actually live in a home that's not 4,000 square feet.
Right. If you're living in Manhattan, people are like, 1,000 square feet. That's massive. That's a lot. I'd love to have that much space. But think about where you live and the size compared to what is relatively important and valuable in that area.
So we got crystal clear on what was important to us, and owning a home wasn't our most important thing, and we bought accordingly, and that has made all the difference in our finances as well as our quality of life. So get crystal clear on what it is you want, and consider William Matthews' strategy of especially for your first time home purchase, and maybe the first few, if you want to start acquiring real estate, look at it as a goal, and look at it as a strategy and not a goal.
Yeah.
So tomorrow's Queer Money follow-up, we're going to cover Queer Money podcast episode number 13, on which we talked about the 5 steps queer Gen Xers must take today to prepare for retirement. So thank you for joining us for another Queer Money follow-up. Here's your Queer Money follow-up takeaway from this episode. Subscribe to the Queer Money podcast here at debtfreeguys.com/QM. Then in the comments below, let us know if you plan on buying real estate in 2021. We would love to know what your thoughts are and how you're planning on doing that. Finally, give this particular video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and again, continue the conversation in the comments below, or join us in the Queer Money Facebook group. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow when we talk about Gen Xers retirement.